How we doing? Good. My name is Jon Reiner. I'm one of the pastors here at First Free. Hello to all of you here in our worship center, and hello to everyone who's viewing in online. Welcome. We say it in our video announcements all the time, but if you are new here, if you're a guest, maybe visiting with someone else, please stop by our First Free Central desk in the gym. It's the round wooden desk. Ask any question that you have about who we are, what we do, and pick up your free gift. We typically here at First Free, we'll just choose a book of the Bible, and we go through it verse by verse by verse by verse by verse by verse by verse for as long as it takes to get through the book. And sometimes if the book is short, it takes a small amount of time, and sometimes if the book is big, it takes us months. So for example, we started a study in the book of Romans, I think last Labor Day, and we ended it on Easter. So we spent the last several months going through the book of Romans. Well, now we are starting our summer series because all of a sudden the last 2 days it starts like feeling like we might actually get a summer this year. Maybe. Let's not get too excited. But we're starting our summer series, and rather than just choosing a book of the Bible, we are doing a focus on an individual's life, the character named David in the Bible. So out of curiosity, how many of you would say that you've ever heard of the character David in the Bible? Yeah, some of us know David and Goliath, David the king, David the shepherd, David the musician, David the general, David who ran around in his underwear, David, right? Like, at some extent we know David. And so it's not that surprising that so many of us recognize him because he seems to be a fairly popular character in the Bible. But what you may not realize is that apart from Jesus himself, no one is talked about in the Bible more than David. He's the second most referenced person in the Bible, and by some numbers, only by like 100 references, apart from Jesus himself, they talk about David. And not Adam and Eve, not Moses, not Abraham, not Isaac, Jacob, one of the disciples, not Paul, David. And so I have to start asking myself, why? Like, why David? What is it about David that's so important that we're going to talk about him so much? What about his life was so significant that it's worth detailing? And why would God tell people later on to continue writing about David? Remember David. Remember David. Aaron mentioned it during worship, but David's also the only person that is given this esteemed compliment of a man after God's own heart. Why? Right? What does that look like? And so today, I have the task of starting the series on David. But what happens when you're doing a topical series on the life of an individual is that anything I would say in the introduction is probably something we're going to cover later on in an actual full service. And so this is a real conversation I had with our senior pastor, Shane. I said, so Shane, are you telling me, do you want me to intro the life of David without talking about David? And he says, yeah, if you could do that, that would be great. Sure, awesome. So I want to ask the question, why David? But I want to ask a bigger question, which is, what is God looking for? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands to that, but I wouldn't be surprised if many of us, if we've been around faith or this Christianity thing for any amount of time, maybe have gotten to points in our lives where maybe you didn't use those exact words, but you thought to yourself, what does God want? What do you want? What do you want from me? What do you want from my life? How do you want me to live? Like, what is it that you want, and what is it that you're looking for? Because it can be easy for us to do this, right? And we love doing this. We love coming to church, and we love going to services and having worship and listening to a message, and we like being a part of this kind of subculture community. A part of us, we really like it. We enjoy it. But what's God really looking for in all of it? Is he looking for really good messages by individuals who stand on stages? Is he looking for really well-done music? Is he looking for a lot of programs? Is he looking for a lot of flash? Is he looking for, what is it? Like, what is it that you're looking for, God? In the midst of all the things that we're doing, we identify ourselves as Christians, as followers of God, but what are you really looking for? I've probably wrestled with that question myself. What do you want? And so today what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the story that leads up to David. I'll do my best not to actually talk much about David, but we're going to look at the story that leads up to David, because some of us, it might be a surprise that King David, in all respects, shouldn't have been king. Right? When you think about who becomes king, it's usually because your parent or relative was king, right? And you inherit the throne. It's not the case with David. How did this kid named David capture the heart of God? How did God find what he was looking for in this kid? And how is it different from what happened before? We're going to look at 3 individuals' lives: a woman named Hannah, a man named Samuel, and a man named Saul. And hopefully by the end, we'll get an understanding of what God's not looking for and maybe what God actually is looking for. So I'm going to pray, and then we'll dive into 1 Samuel chapter 12. God, I thank you for who you are. I thank you for your mercy, your grace, your love, and your truth. And I just ask that this would be a holy moment this morning. That for all of us who are here, if anyone's watching this online now or later, God, that we would just have a moment with you, or as we look at the story that leads up to David, that we would understand, man, maybe there really is something that God's looking for. Maybe there is really an attitude of my heart that God wants. And maybe I really need to change my perspective of God. And maybe I need to regain a sense of awe for you again, God. Maybe I need to regain a sense of fear of the Lord again. And God, for some of us who maybe we've just gotten dry, we've gotten callous, we've gotten really comfortable, and it's gotten really easy to go through just this on a regular basis, God, that you start to chip away at our hearts a little bit, make it raw, make us remember. Why do we do what we do? Why do we call ourselves followers of God, and what difference does that really make in our lives? Challenge us this morning as we look at these 3 stories. In your name, amen. I like stories, if you know that about me. I enjoy book stories, movie stories, and it seems like story writers often have similar ways of setting up a story. Sometimes a story or a movie starts at the beginning, right? And then it's just chronological throughout the whole thing. Those are really good because that means that the person next to you probably isn't asking a lot of questions. It's true, right? Oh my goodness. I don't know if that's a pet peeve of anyone else. What's happening? Who's that? What are they doing? Where'd they come from? What's that going to mean? Sorry. Or, who's that? What does that mean? What are they doing? Where's that person? Right? Just watch for 3 more seconds. I bet you're going to have your head like, are they really leaving the car? They're going to walk in the woods? Yes, they always do. Are they going to get killed? Yes. So we have stories that just are chronological, right? Sometimes we have stories that start at the end and work their way backwards. There's a lot more questions inherent in those storylines. Wait, what? I thought that already happened. What right? Sometimes, like the Curious Case of Benjamin Button's like both. Like one starts at the beginning, one starts at the end, and they go backwards. If you've ever seen it, don't do it. And then there's some stories that just like drops you right in the middle, and you have no idea what's going on, right? Like, that's what I'm going to do this morning. I'm going to drop us right in the middle of the story, and we're going to start unfolding it, and hopefully get a little understanding of what's happening. Let me bring you up to speed. If you don't recognize this name, it's fine. We're going to get into it. There's an old man by the name of Samuel. Samuel is standing in front of the people of Israel, and he's giving a speech in 1 Samuel chapter 12. And in my opinion, I think it's a very, very important chapter in understanding this whole idea of Israel's kings, David, Saul, all of it. I think it's really important. So Samuel stands before the people of Israel, and he gives them a history lesson. And the history lesson comes down to this. Remember all the times you were caught in slavery and bondage, and then remember all the times God delivered you. And remember all the times that you forgot about God, and then remember how many times God was faithful. And then remember all the times that you forgot that he was faithful and you got yourself in trouble again, and how many times he delivered you. That's going to be the essence of this speech, right? So we're going to use this as kind of our grid in going through the rest of this morning's message. So let's dive in as Samuel is addressing the people of Israel and starting by giving himself a trial. So Samuel addressed all of Israel. He said this, I've listened to everything you've said to me. I've listened carefully to every word, and I've given you a king. Samuel is stating the fact that they now have a king over them. Your king among you, your king that's leading you. Now look at me. I'm old, I'm gray, my sons are still here. I've led you faithfully from my youth until this very day. Let me ask you a question. Look at me. Do you have any complaints to bring before God and his anointed? Have I ever stolen something from you? Have I ever stolen so much as an ox or a donkey from you? Have I ever taken advantage of you or exploited you for my own gain? Have I ever taken a bribe? Have I ever profited from your misfortune or played fast and loose with the law for my own benefit? Have I done anything against you to make you not trust my words? Have I done anything or treated you unfairly at all? Have I profited while you were exploited? Have I done anything to make you believe that you can't trust what I'm about to say? If you have a complaint, please, by all means, bring it now, and I will make it right. People respond, oh no. I say, never. Samuel, you've never done any of that. You've never abused us. You've never lined your own pockets. In other words, you've never benefited from our misfortune. You've never stolen from us. No, that's never happened. So Samuel continues. He says this, well, then that settles it then. So you can trust what I'm about to say. That settles it. I've never treated you unfairly. Would you go so far as to say God is our witness? God's appointed leader is our witness that you find nothing against me. He's really pushing on them. I want to know that I know that I know that you're going to believe the next words I'm about to say. It settles it then. Would we all agree that God is our witness? I have never done anything wrong before you. They said, yes, God is our witness. So then Samuel turns it. He flips it. He says, okay, let's just clarify. The God that is our witness that I've never done anything wrong against you, this God is the same God who made Moses and Aaron your leaders and brought your ancestors out of Egypt. Is that true? That's the same God we're talking about? Yes. Then he says, okay, in that case, now take your stand before him. You find no fault in me, so now it's your turn. Now take your stand before him as I review your case before God. Now you're on trial. Okay. Let me review your case before God in the light of all the righteous ways in which God has worked with you and your ancestors. So he's about to bring this whole case against them, right, in this speech. And he clarified it first. Look, have I done anything wrong? Any reason not to trust me? Any reason that I can't be a standard for truth here, that you can't believe the words I'm going to say? They're all like, no, that's good. We believe you. God is our witness. Yes. Okay, now it's your turn. Now I'm going to put you on trial. As we go through some of these stories today, I want us all to just check our hearts. Man, can I relate to that at all? Is he speaking to me? This is what he says. He starts the history lesson. When Jacob's sons entered Egypt, the Egyptians made life hard for them. So what'd they do? They cried out to God for help. And God sent Moses and Aaron, who led your ancestors out of Egypt and settled them here in this place. He starts a history lesson all the way back in the books of Genesis and Exodus. If you're not familiar, let's have a little just fast forward overcap. In the book of Genesis, God makes a promise to a man by the name of Abraham. And he promises him three things. He says, Abraham, I'm going to give you a family that is so big, that is so without the ability to number. It's going to be like the sand on the beach and the stars in the sky. You're going to have so many descendants, so many sons and daughters. I'm going to bring you to a land that is your own. I'm going to give you a promised land. It's going to be a choice land. Like, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be fruitful. It's going to be like you're going to grow. The soil's good. I'm going to give you this incredible land. And then he says, I'm also going to make you a blessing. Your family is going to bless all nations of the earth. He promises him three things, right? So if you go through the book of Genesis, you'll see that God makes good on his promise. This family is exploding. And by the end of Genesis, this family that is growing and growing and growing makes their way into Egypt to take refuge during a drought. And so as they're in Egypt, right, they go in there with good fortune. The book of Genesis ends. Congratulations, you made it through the first book of the Bible. Exodus, the second book of the Bible, picks up a couple hundred years later, and now all of a sudden this family has grown and grown and grown and grown, but Egypt has looked at them and made them their slave labor force. So now the chosen people of God are in bondage. God's chosen people are slaves, right? And they start crying out to God. Like, do you see how we're being treated? Do you see our bondage? Do you see our slavery? Do you see us? Do you hear us? Do you care? And if so, deliver us. Samuel is showing them how many times they've been in a place where they desperately needed the help of God, and God showed up. How many times they were stuck, and God was faithful. And so in that moment, they cried out to God in Egypt, and God sends a man by the name of Moses and a man by the name of Aaron, and miraculously, he delivers them out of enslavement, across the Red Sea, into the wilderness. They wander for 40 years, and along that time, during that time of wandering, this constant struggle starts to happen over and over and over again, where regardless of how miraculously God showed up and delivered them, the people somehow forgot. Like God came through big for them, did things that were like undeniable, things that you just couldn't even explain except for saying like, oh my goodness, God showed up in my life. He delivered me. He got me out of this situation I didn't think I could ever get out of. He really brought life and death. He brought beauty out of ashes. Like he brought something good out of something I thought was terrible over and over again. He did it in such a way that I can't even explain it other than it was God. But then before long, they would forget it and turn away from him and try to find their sense of identity in another people group and another God. They would find their sense of worship in something else, and they would forget the fear of God. They would forget how awesome he is. They would forget to worship him. They would forget to focus on him, and their focus would shift. And throughout this time in the wilderness, it happened over and over and over again. And constantly, God would deliver them. God would bring them back, and God would remind them about how faithful he is. But over and over and over again, this cycle would happen. But Samuel ends it with, finally, you were settled here. Like God made good. God said he would do something, and he did it. You are now in the land that he promised you. He came through for you. You didn't see it in the moment. You struggled to understand it, and you struggled to remain faithful to him, but he made good on what he said he was going to do. Now you're in the place that he promised Abraham. Samuel goes on with this speech. That's kind of like example 1, right? Like exhibit A, exhibit B, he says. After they were in this place that he promised, they soon forgot God. He sold them off to Sisera, commander of Hazor's army, later to a hard life under the Philistines, still later to the king of Moab, and they had to fight for their lives. And then what happened? Then they cried to God for help. And they confessed, and this is on us, like we did it again, we've sinned. We did it again, we forgot your faithfulness, we turned our hearts away from you. They said, we sinned, we've gone off, we left God. We started worshiping other gods. And so God, please deliver us from our situation, deliver us from the mess that we're in, deliver us from the brutalities of our enemies, and then we'll worship you alone. So now we've gone from like the Genesis, Exodus, now into kind of more like the book of Judges, where this cycle happens over and over and over again, where God comes through for the people of Israel, and they see God come through in their life in such a huge, miraculous, like unexplainable way, and it's so certain, oh my goodness, yes, this is God. Let's worship him, let's obey him. Oh, our hearts are on fire for him. Oh, this is so great. And then time starts to happen. And they're kind of in a good place. And I want us to try to see if we can relate to this. Like God comes through in our lives, and we're kind of in a good place. Like, oh man, that was awesome. God came through for me last week in a way that I could never have imagined. It was totally God last week. And it's like 2 weeks. It's like 3 weeks. And you start to forget like how big God came through in your life. And I think sometimes when things get good, we start to get comfortable. And when we get comfortable, we start to get lazy. And when we get lazy, we start to lose our focus and our attention on how great and faithful and awesome and glorious and like, oh, God. And our focus starts to wander like, yeah, that was good a few weeks ago. Like, but I don't know. Now life just happens and we get caught up in everything else. And we're like, I find myself in another weird situation. I lose my focus on God. I start focusing on anything and everything else. I invest myself in good things. You invest yourself in my marriage. I invest myself in family. I invest myself in my job. I invest myself in this and in that thing. And I invest myself everywhere else. And I don't really focus on God anymore, like because I figure I can just kind of do it on my own. And so I focus on all these other things and I allow other things to start to get my attention. And the more of my attention it gets my affections, it gets my emotions. And all of a sudden, even though I might not put the word on it, I start worshiping those other things in my life because that's really the priority of my life. And all of a sudden, the people of Israel, they started to get good. They started to get comfortable. They started to get lazy. They started to get relaxed. They lose their focus. They focus on other things. And before long, the things that they're focusing on, the things they're giving themselves to, start to overtake them. So they started looking at the gods around them. They started looking at the cultures around them. They stopped being faithful and obedient to God. They started being faithful and obedient to other gods, other things. They gave their emotions, their affections, their worship, for lack of a better word, to something else. And all of a sudden, before long, that thing overtook them. And now I find myself in a difficult situation again. Now I find myself overtaken by something in my life, and now I feel like I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know if I can get through this. Oh my goodness, I feel so overcome. I feel so overwhelmed. I feel so anxious about this thing. I feel like my world is crashing in on me. And then comes our natural reaction. God, help me. Where are you, God? God, deliver me. I think it's interesting. So often in our lives, when things go good, we give ourselves the credit, and when things go bad, we blame God and ask why he's not there. When things are really good in our lives, it's easy for us to take the credit. Well, yeah, like I was just really good. I was good. Oh, yeah, that was good. Like I did that. Oh, I did it. I can do it on my own. When life starts hitting the fan, you're like, oh my gosh, like what am I supposed to do? Like I feel overwhelmed, I feel like surrounded, I feel like my world is crashing in. Then 21st century America does the same thing. God, deliver me. Like, where are you? Deliver me. That's the book of Judges. People of Israel find themselves in a place where things are good. And then things got comfortable. Then maybe they started to get a little lazy. They started looking elsewhere. Other nations started to overtake them. Now all of a sudden they feel overwhelmed, overtaken by another people group, and they start crying out to God for help. And when they would cry out, God would send an individual to help deliver them. Samuel says this. So what did God do? He sent people like Gideon and Barak and Jephthah and Samuel. He lists himself in the speech. And Samuel. And he saved you over and over and over again. The common denominator in your life that got you out of messes was not you. The common denominator in your life wasn't even each individual judge. The common denominator in their life that was faithful to the end was that God would save them from the hard life that surrounded them by their enemies, and they would enter into a time of peace. So they would cry out to God, God would deliver them, then they would have a moment of peace. Oh, so good. Remember that service we had last week? Remember that message we had last week? Remember that time that God delivered us? It was so good. It was so great. But then time would lapse. And sometimes when things are really good, then sometimes we get comfortable. Sometimes we get comfortably lazy. Sometimes we get lazy. We lose our focus. We start focusing on something else. And all of a sudden, before we know it, I don't know where God is in my life, and I feel overtaken by everything else. And it would happen over and over and over again in these cycles. The last one that he mentions is himself, Samuel. I originally wrestled with talking about this woman named Hannah, simply because I didn't know if I needed to. I didn't know if it was really going to fit. I just felt this check on my heart. And if you know me, you know that I like plans. I like having a plan and executing the plan and not diverting from the plan, like to an unhealthy level. I just felt this check in my heart. I want to read the story of Hannah. She's related to this. She's Samuel's mother. But the reason I want to do it is because I'm going to read the story of Hannah, and I really believe that there are some people who just need to hear Hannah's story. I think there's some of us who just need to hear the story of someone who is hurting and in pain and broken. And I just felt this check on my heart from God in preparing this, that like I needed to say this and talk about Hannah in all three services because people are going to be here. When we, rabbit hole, here we go. When we call ourselves Regular Church, just come as you are, we mean it and we want that. But that also means that some people are just coming with stuff in life that they're dealing with that they don't know anywhere else to go. Right? And I don't know any other way to get through this. And so that's why I want to talk about the story of Hannah. And afterwards, I'm just going to pause the whole message and I'm just going to pray. Okay? I don't do that, right? But I'm going to do it because I just feel like that's what God is leading me to do. So the story of David is connected to the story of Samuel. The story of Samuel starts with a woman named Hannah. Hannah is the second wife of a man who has two wives. And it's a different issue for a different day, a different sermon that I'll let Shane preach. It's a different thing. So here's the thing, though. Like this man has two wives, Hannah and another wife, and this other wife is, for lack of a better way of saying it, really fertile. And so she's able to bear children over and over again. And that's a heart thing for all, and no matter what generation or what century you're living in. In the ancient Near Eastern culture, it was really important because that was, you pass on your lineage, you pass on your family line, not only just by having kids, but specifically having sons, right? Because they carry on the name. And so it was such this vital, important thing, and it was this honored thing. It was something that's seen as great value to be able to produce sons. And so this man has 2 wives, Hannah and another wife, and this other wife is able to have kids and able to have sons, and Hannah isn't. Hannah's infertile at this point. She can't have a child. And this other wife keeps pushing it on her, kind of shoving her face in it, pointing it out to her. We get the impression it's just this constant verbal abuse almost of, he must love me more, I must be more valuable. Why can't you do what you're supposed to do? Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? Why aren't you producing sons? Why are you producing it? And it's weighing on Hannah. And finally, Hannah, to this point where she's just so crushed, she goes to the temple, she goes to the sanctuary, and that's where we pick up this story. So she pulled herself together, she slipped away quietly, and she entered the sanctuary. The priest Eli was on duty at the entrance to God's temple, and it's in the customary seat. She was crushed in her soul. Crushed in soul, Hannah prayed to God, and she cried out, and she cried inconsolably. She is just, the picture I get, right, if you've ever just seen someone maybe you've experienced where you're just crying so inconsolably, you're just wrenching, you're just pouring out tears, you're just crying, there's nothing beautiful about it, right? You're just tears everywhere, your face is all red, you are just emptying yourself because you are so crushed. She's just crying inconsolably. And then she prayed to God, and she made a vow. And she said, "Oh, God of the angel armies." That's a great title. I challenge you in the next 2 weeks, just start all of your prayers that way. "Oh, God of the angel armies, if you'll take a good hard look at my pain, and if you'll quit neglecting me and go into action for me by giving me a son, then I'll give him completely and unreservedly to you. I'll set him apart for a life of holy discipline." Sometimes we read prayers in the Bible and we try to critique them. Why would she say God's neglected me? Because that's honest to God how she feels. That's the raw sense of her heart. And I like it. I'm not making a theological stance on it. I just like it. It's that point of being so raw before God and so hurting and so broken and so frustrated and so upset and so calloused and so just beaten down and so upset that you're just okay, God, here it is. Here's how I genuinely feel right now. If you would just take a good hard look at my pain and you would stop neglecting me. You know what she's talking about me. You know the trash she's talking about me. You know my situation. You know how broken I feel. You know how overwhelmed I feel. You know how hopeless I feel. You know how frustrated I am. You know how I feel like everyone is against me. You know this pain that I am feeling. If you would just stop neglecting me, if you were to go into action for me and give me a son, then I promise, I swear to you, I would give him back. I wouldn't hold on. I wouldn't possess it. I would give him right back to you. I would give him in worship to you. I would let him be in ministry to you. If you would just see my heart and where I am right now. If we just paused right there. Again, I felt this thing, I don't know, that could really be the case of individuals here this weekend. I'm just in pain. And I don't think anyone cares. I don't think anyone knows what I'm going through. I don't think anyone is there. I think I'm all by myself. I think I'm completely alone. I feel so distraught. I feel so upset. I feel so frustrated. I feel like I keep hitting this wall over and over and over again in my life. I feel so depressed. I feel so anxious. I feel so just unraveled. I don't know what to do. And I feel like I'm all by myself, and it feels like God is just not listening to me. I feel like God hasn't heard me, hasn't heard my prayers, hasn't heard my cries, that God isn't listening to me, that maybe he's too busy, he's too focused on someone who has their life together, that maybe that's the heart of God, and maybe that's what he's looking for, is he's just looking for someone who has their whole life together, that looks really good, that has it all down. Like he's just obviously, he doesn't care about me, he's checked me off the list, and he's not listening. And if that is you, I want to say this. Let this be the moment that you realize God is listening. Stopping this service right now, stopping this message, I want you to hear this. God's ear and God's heart is always pointed towards and close to the brokenhearted. Every single time. So if that is you, by no means am I going to ask you to stand up or raise your hand, because that would be terrible. But I really am just going to make a pause. I'm just going to stop. Because if I'm not willing to stop and pray about that, then what? So I can get through my sermon? Please. So would you just join me in prayer? I just want to pray. I just want to stop. God, you are the God of angel armies. You are the God who is in control and oversees the vastness of the eternal expanse. You are the God of creation that breathed life and created things from your own imagination and your word. And you are always, always here. There's nowhere I can go that I can hide from you. There's nowhere I can go that I'm not seen by you. And so, God, I pray that if there are individuals here, maybe in this auditorium or maybe watching online, where their heart is just spinning. It almost feels nauseous, like, yeah, that's me, that's my story. I'm so upset, I'm so frustrated, I'm in so much pain, I feel so much brokenness, I feel so distraught, I feel so desperate, I don't think anyone hears me, and I definitely don't think God cares anymore. Holy Spirit, would you meet them where they are right now, right here? Would you even just let this moment of stop, this moment of pause, speak wonders to their heart? These aren't Pastor John's words. This is God saying, I see you and I hear you and I've never left you and I've never forsaken you. And where other people have failed you, I have not and I never will. I got you. I got you. It's okay, I've got you. Holy Spirit, just awaken something in their heart of hope again. I thank you for that. I thank you for your faithfulness, God. In your name. Amen. So what happens to Hannah? She's just unleashing her heart. It just so happened that as she continued in prayer before God, Eli was watching her closely. That's creepy. I don't like that one bit. He's sitting in his customary seat watching her closely. Hannah was praying in her heart silently. Her lips moved, but no sound was heard, right? Like, it's that inner dialogue. It's just that inner anguish. And she's just yelling internally, you know what I mean? Like, she's just yelling within herself, but outwardly it's just, right? Like, that's her. Like, she's crying, just. And so Eli, watching her, comes to this conclusion. Eli jumped to the conclusion that she was drunk. Well done, sir. So he approached her and said, "You're drunk." I'm sorry. I've come to the conclusion that you are drunk. You're drunk. How long do you plan to keep this up? Sober up, woman. Like, oh man, like, we can laugh about that because it just sounds like such a jerk move, right? But like, it can be easy sometimes to just look at someone and guess like, oh, man, I know what they're doing. I know their story. Just knock it off. Like, we get that like omniscient storyteller type perspective, right? Because we know on one side, Hannah is just so distraught and she's pouring out her heart to God. Eli's like, she's wasted. It can be easy to jump to conclusion. What does Hannah say though? Oh no, sir, please. She says, I am a woman hard used. Like, I just feel beaten down and broken and abused and neglected. I feel like I have nothing to myself of value or worth. I feel calloused and jaded. I feel like God isn't listening to me anymore. I am in so much pain. I am a woman hard used. You don't get it. I don't expect you to understand because I don't think anyone understands me, but I am a woman hard used. I haven't been drinking. I don't have a drop of wine or beer. The only thing I've been pouring out is my heart. The only thing I've been pouring out is my heart, and I've been pouring it out to God. So please don't for a minute think that I'm a bad woman. It's because I'm so desperately unhappy. I am so desperately unhappy and in such pain that I've stayed here for so long. I don't know how long it was. I don't know how long she's been in the sanctuary. I don't know how long she's been crying inconsolably. I don't know. But the longer we allow ourselves to believe it was, it just adds to this picture of how much pain she's in, right? Like she's just willing to sit there and cry and pour out her heart because I am desperately unhappy. So Eli answered her, "Go in peace. And may the God of Israel give you what you have asked of him. Think well of me and pray for me," she said. She went her way, her face radiant. Up before dawn, it says they worshiped God and they returned home. Elkanah slept with Hannah, his wife, and God began making the necessary arrangements in response to what she had asked. I'm sorry, but if that's not great wording, I don't know what is. Like they did their part, God did his part, you know what I mean? So they slept together, and then God began making the necessary arrangements in response to what she had asked for. Now, if we can just get that visual out of our head, I want you to take that verbiage, though, and apply it to your life. How different would your prayer life be if that's truly what you believed happened? If our prayers weren't just like, "God bless this meal," because that's what I always say before I eat, or "God, let me go to sleep tonight," or "God, help me find my keys." But like, what if when we prayed, like we truly believed that when we prayed, God started making arrangements to bring about what we asked for? That's a different perspective of God. That's a different perspective of prayer. That's almost like a trust in God and a confidence in God, right? Like, otherwise sometimes it feels like we just kind of say a prayer and then throw it out there. Like one of those like message in a bottle, you tie a message to a balloon and you're so excited to see if someone gets it. I don't know if people do that anymore. We did that like in middle school. It was weird. But it's one of those things that you just kind of throw up there and you're like, I don't know, it's probably not going to land. He's probably not listening. It probably doesn't matter. But if our perspective was different, if our perspective was this, that when I pray, God starts making arrangements, that might change our prayer life. That might change how much confidence we really have in God and how much trust we really have that he's going to come through in our lives. If we truly believe that when I prayed, God makes arrangements. And so God made the arrangements, the necessary arrangements. And before the year was out, Hannah had conceived. Imagine the joy, like just the spectrum of emotions, crying inconsolably, beaten, abused, forsaken, neglected by God, till all of a sudden, like, I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant. Right? Like that. It happened. And the shock at first, like, oh my goodness, I think God actually had answered that prayer. Like oh my goodness, like, I'm pregnant. The rush of those emotions. She had conceived, given birth to a son, and she names her son Samuel because I asked God for him. This incredible blessing in my life because I asked God for him. And so Samuel was born, and Hannah returns Samuel back to the temple to dedicate him to ministry. Like she wasn't lying when she said, I'm going to give it back. I'm going to give him back. The story of Hannah is the story of like someone who is so distraught, so desperately unhappy, so beaten down, abused, forsaken, neglected, and feeling like no one listens, including God, pouring out her heart in this desperate attempt to be heard by God, right? God answering it, and God hearing her, God comforting her, and God granting her that deepest desire of her heart. And now she comes back. And she's presenting the son again. And who does she run into but Eli, Creeper McCreeper Pants? Excuse me, sir. Would you believe that I'm the very woman who is standing before you at this very spot praying to God? I can only imagine that her whole appearance is different, right? Like, God has transformed her. seeing the faithfulness of God in her life, even in just one occasion, has transformed her. Would you even believe that I'm the same woman? Would you believe that I'm the same woman who stood here, who was bawling? You thought I was drunk? Remember me? Would you even believe that I'm the same woman? Look at me. I prayed to God. I prayed for this, and God gave it to me. He gave me what I asked for. But since God was faithful to me, I'm going to be faithful to God. Oh, it's easy to receive God's faithfulness and then walk away and be like, oh yeah, no, I said I'd give it back, but it's so easy, right? How many of us have ever prayed those prayers like, God, if you just come through in this one thing, I'll never do anything wrong again. I'll give you everything in my life. I'll live for you wholeheartedly every single day, and I'll pray 8 hours a day. Have you ever had one of those things happen? Like it comes true, and you're like, oh yeah. You're going to hold me to that? Oh, it's different though. See, what Hannah understood is that God's faithfulness to her required her faithfulness back to God. Like, I'm going to give you back what I promised. You were faithful to me. I'm going to be faithful to you. And so she presents her son. I have now dedicated him to God. He's dedicated to God for life. And there and then they worshiped God. I want to briefly tell you the story of Samuel real quick before we kind of get back to his speech. A story from Samuel's life that sets the stage because Samuel grew in the temple and he grew in the sanctuary and he grew under the leadership of this priest named Eli. Eli had 2 sons who no longer really feared God. They didn't worship God. They didn't really care about God. They started desecrating the name of God, desecrating the temple. They were just running rampant. And Eli didn't do anything. Over and over and over again, he didn't do anything. Even with words of warning, he didn't do anything. And so there's a shift all of a sudden that's going to happen, that even though Samuel is a young man, we have Eli the priest and Samuel the young boy. And it's almost like if you read it, it seems that like the spiritual authority is going to shift from this priest to this kid. It says this, the boy Samuel was serving God under Eli's direction. Now this was a time when the revelation of God was rarely heard or seen. Like people just aren't hearing from God anymore. Or maybe they're not listening, I don't know, but the revelation of God was rarely seen or heard. And so one night Eli was sound asleep. It was well before dawn. Samuel was still in his bed, right? And then God called out to Samuel. He says, Samuel. Now, the revelation of God had been not happening for a long time. He's just a kid. It goes on to say, like, this was before he even knew God personally, right? So he does what any kid would do who's working for someone, right? He gets up and he runs to Eli and says, I heard you call. Here I am. Eli said, I didn't call you. Go back to bed. Oh, that was weird, right? Like, oh, man. Okay, fine. Maybe I was just dreaming it. Okay, I can go back to bed. Go back to bed. God calls again. Samuel. Maybe it's just my own head. I kind of think God's messing with him, but it's probably not. What is that? Samuel. Hey, Samuel. Samuel gets up and he goes to Eli. I heard you call. Like, here I am. What do you want? Stop messing with me. And Eli says, like, son, I didn't call you. Go back to bed, right? Goes back to bed, lays back down. God's like, Samuel. Samuel gets up. He goes to Eli again. I heard you call. Here I am. What do you want? That's when it dawned on Eli that God was calling the boy. So Eli directed Samuel, go back and lie down. If the voice calls again, say this, speak, God, I'm your servant, ready to listen. Like if someone said that to me, like, and I'm Samuel, I'm like, God? Like God? That's the one whispering in my room. So God came and stood before him exactly as before, and he called out, Samuel. Samuel's like, speak. I'm your servant, ready to listen. Now listen to the bomb that God is dropping on young Samuel. He says this, God said to Samuel, listen carefully. I'm getting ready to do something in Israel that's going to shake everyone up and get their attention. The time has come for me to bring down on Eli's family everything I warned him of, every last word of it. I'm letting him know that the time is up. I'm bringing judgment on his family for good. He knew what was going on, that his sons were desecrating God's name and God's place, and he did nothing to stop them. This is my sentence on the family of Eli. The evil of Eli's family can never be wiped out by sacrifice or offering. Is that all? Any other doom that you left out that you want me to tell my boss tomorrow morning? It's a shift, though. It's a shift. Like when I look at Eli knew that the fear of the Lord was being neglected, that the worship of God was being neglected, the obedience to God was being neglected, and did nothing. Now God's going to a kid. He's going to a kid, saying, here's my message. I want you to deliver it. Will you be faithful to deliver this hard message? And so, verse 15, Samuel stayed in bed until morning. Of course he did. He's not running off in a hurry to deliver that message. He rose early and he went about his duties, opening the doors of the sanctuary because he dreaded having to tell the vision to Eli. Of course he did. He's like, all right, I'm just going to get to work here. Hope I don't see Eli doing anything. And then Eli summoned Samuel. Samuel, my son. Samuel came running. Yeah, what can I do for you? Samuel says, what did he say? What did God say? Tell it to me, all of it. Don't suppress or soften one word of it. As God is your judge, I want it all, word for word, as he said it to you. That's a tough place to be in, right? How many of us would try to sugarcoat that one? Oh, it wasn't much. He's just asking how I was doing. He tells him every single word for word. He held nothing back. Eli said, he's God. Let him do whatever he thinks is best. And so Samuel grew up, and God was with him. And his prophetic record was flawless. Oh, I like that. That means that he was flawless in his ability to hear the voice of God, recognize a message from God, and deliver it with confidence, trusting God every single time. And God continued to show up and reveal himself through his word to Samuel. That's the man who's standing here next to a king delivering a message to the people of Israel years and years and years and years later. Have you found any fault with me? Have I done anything wrongly against you? Have I lined my own pockets? Have I treated you unfairly? No. You're still the kid. You've been faithful from your youth to now, that you've always been genuine and sincere. So kind of phase one of God's faithfulness and Israel's slavery and bondage was in Egypt and through the wilderness. And then phase two is with the judges in this constant cycle of things are good, we get comfortable, we get lazy, we get lazy, we lose focus, we look at something else, and all of a sudden that thing that we're looking at overtakes us. And then we cry out to God for help and he comes and delivers. Over and over and over again, that cycle continues. Now exhibit C. Samuel says in his speech, but when you saw Nahash, king of the Ammonites, preparing to attack you, you said to me, no more of this. We want a king to lead us, even though God was already your king. How easy can it be to forget how faithful God is in our lives on a day-to-day basis? How easy can it be to forget even the big things that God does in our hearts, God does in our lives, or even forget salvation itself? We can become numb to it and forget God's faithfulness, always looking for something else to give us identity and purpose and security, something else I can trust other than God. I have to find it in something else. Finally, they've reached a new stage where they look at all the other countries around them and no, we're done with this. We're done with you being our leader. We're done with just God being our leader and God being our government. We want a king like everyone else. We want to look like everyone else. We want to have a military like everyone else. We want to guard and defend ourselves like everyone else. Because the more you start saying that, what I'm hearing is that I don't really trust God. I want to be like everyone else so I can depend on us and our government and our king and our leader and our this and our that to protect us. I want to be like everyone else. Having God as my faithful leader just isn't cutting it anymore. How many times did God show up over and over again? It apparently is not enough. It wasn't enough. We want someone else to lead us. We want a real king. So Samuel says, here's the king that you wanted, the king that you asked for. God has let you have your own way and given you a king. But he gives him three things. If you just fear God, if you worship and obey him, if you don't rebel against him, It's all good. Do those 3 things and you're fine. Don't do those 3 things, and you will fare no better than your fathers. So I'm not going to go into the whole story of it, but there's a man who enters the story. He is described as a head and shoulders above everyone else, right? He's like the epitome of the physical characteristics you would look for in a leader. Strong, tall, dark, handsome, right? As opposed to short, white, and bald with a red beard. Hey, that was unnecessary. His name was not David, it was Saul. It's like a guy that walks in the room and you're like, oh, he's a leader. Oh, who's that guy? Grabs the attention of everyone. Like, who's that? He met every physical characteristic that people would want in a leader. That's the one that they wanted. And Samuel anoints him as king. And so as Samuel is giving this speech in 1 Samuel 12, it's not King David. It's not King David he's talking about. It's Saul. You wanted a king. Here he is. You want a king like everyone else. This king is just like everyone else. You didn't want to just have God be the faithful, awe-inspiring leader anymore. You looked elsewhere, so here it is. This is the king. And he says, as long as you and this king fear God, worship and obey him, and don't rebel, everything will be fine. One chapter after this speech, we see what many would start to begin to call the fall of Saul. If you look at his whole life, you would find over and over and over again. Like Saul was anointed king, and he could have remained king, I think. I think he could have remained king, and his lineage would have been the kingly family. He would have had the dynasty. Like he could have been king. He was anointed by God to be king. What is God looking for? Well, what's God not looking for? 1 Samuel 13. Saul was a young man when he began as king. He was king over Israel for many years. He conscripted enough men for 3 companies of soldiers. He's building an army, right? The other company was under Jonathan at Gibeah. He sent the rest of the men home. Jonathan attacks and kills the Philistine governor. And when the Philistines heard the news, they raised the alarm. The Hebrews are in revolt. In other words, war. Saul ordered that the trumpets be blown throughout the land. The word went all over Israel that Saul has killed the Philistine governor and he has drawn the first blood. The Philistines are stirred up and they're mad as hornets. Summoned the army came to Saul at Gilgal. The Philistines rallied their forces to fight against Israel, and they have 3 companies of chariots and 6 companies of cavalry and so many infantry that they looked like the sand on the seashore. And they went up on the hills and they set camp to surround Israel. Now the Israelites saw that they were way outnumbered and in deep trouble, surrounded by the Philistines, and so they ran for cover. They're hiding in caves and pits and ravines and brambles and cisterns, wherever they can hide. They retreated across the Jordan River. They became refugees in other countries. The soldiers that were still with him started to become scared to death. But God had sent Samuel to give a message to Saul, and this is what he said. Before you go to battle, worship with me. Before you go to battle, wait for Samuel to offer an offering, to do a sacrifice in worship. Before you fight your battle, worship. It's an interesting concept. Before you fight your battle, wait to worship. Wait for Samuel. But think of Saul's perspective, right? Think of Saul's perspective. He is surrounded. He is surrounded by an enemy army that outnumbers him. His own people are running away. His own soldiers are scared to death. They're hiding wherever they can. He is overcome and overwhelmed. And he sees all of his enemies around him, circling around him, about to destroy him. And it says that he waited 7 days, the time set by Samuel. He waited, right? Samuel failed to show up. And his soldiers were slipping away right and left. What do you do? If God gives us a direction in our life and we don't see the result when we want to see it, how we want to see it, what do? Do we still trust God? Do we still live in obedience? Do we still wait? Are we still faithful? And what does it look like when the world seems like it's crashing in around us? Like every area of our life is falling apart and it seems like we're completely overwhelmed and outnumbered. What do? This is what Saul did. It says that Saul took charge. Bring me the burnt offering and the peace offerings. He went ahead and sacrificed the burnt offerings on his own. We might look at that and be like, okay, cool, he did it. Don't fight until you do this. And he did it. But why did he do it? I think the impression we get is like his main focus was being scared to death. His main focus was, I need to go to battle. My main focus is this. Maybe I just need to check this thing off my list. Maybe if I just check off this religious act, then it'll go well for me. If I just check off this religious act of sacrifice, then it'll go well for me. It doesn't matter that it's not really how God called me to do it. It's not like I'm kind of like I'm disobeying God to get God's favor. It's a weird way of looking at it, right? Like I'm disobeying God to get God's favor. I'm being unfaithful to God to obtain God's faithfulness. It's a roundabout thing. I'm just going to check this religious thing off. So no sooner had he done it than Samuel shows up. Of course, isn't that how it always goes? Y'all remember being kids, your parents said don't do something? You spend like 15 minutes thinking about whether you should do it or not, and by the time you actually do it, all of a sudden like mom apparates in front of you. Ah! No sooner had he done the sacrifice, Samuel shows up, and Samuel says, what on earth are you doing? Saul answers, well, when I saw I was losing my army from under me, when I saw that I was surrounded, when I saw that you hadn't come when you said you would, that's so us, isn't it? Like, it's your fault. When you didn't come through, when you didn't answer all my questions, when you didn't tell me, it was you, when you didn't come when you said you would, and that the Philistines were all surrounding me, when the enemies were surrounding me, when like this battle is about to happen and I feel overwhelmed and I feel anxious and I feel like my whole world is falling in me, I know I have to fight a battle. And when you didn't show up, I just did it myself. The Philistines are about to come down on me. I haven't yet come before God asking for it, so I just took things into my own hands and I sacrificed the burnt offerings. One translation says that Saul felt obligated to worship. I just felt obligated to do it so that I could get the end result. What's God looking for? What's God not looking for? We can compare Eli and Samuel. We also compared Saul with David. Samuel's response to Saul was simply this: that was a foolish thing to do. If you had kept the appointment that God commanded, by now you would have set a firm and lasting foundation under your kingly rule. If you just would have feared the Lord, if you just would have obeyed him, if you just would have set him as a higher priority, if you just would have remembered his faithfulness, if you just would have trusted him even when your life seems surrounded by an enemy, if you just would have listened and waited. But now, your kingly rule is falling to pieces, and I want us to hear this sentence: God is out looking for your replacement right now. What's God not looking for? I'm not sure that I don't think God is looking for me in my life to get to that point where man, he comes through, and then I get really good, and I get really comfortable, and I get kind of lazy and relaxed, and I'm not really focusing on God anymore. I start focusing on everything else in my life. I get overwhelmed and overcome, and I start feeling oppressed by everything around me, and I feel like my whole world is falling apart, and I kind of forget where God is, and then I cry out to him again, and I start it all over. I'm not sure God is looking for the individual that forgets the faithfulness of God, doesn't feel like I can trust in God, but I just need to pull myself up by my bootstraps and do it myself. I think the first thing that God is really looking for in our lives, to go back to Samuel's speech, is the fear of the Lord. I think we've lost this. We've minimized this, and we've made this really soft and comfortable. And we say, well, I don't think you're really supposed to have a fear of God. I think I am. I think I'm supposed to have a healthy fear of God. I think I'm supposed to see God as like the all-encompassing I am, the beginning and the end, the exact standard of righteousness and perfection. When other individuals in the Bible encountered God, like the prophet Isaiah, God shows up the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah says, I'm dead. Like I am dead. That's not like a cushy, cozy version of God. That's like you really are as big and as awesome and as powerful and as glorious as I've heard that you are. And I've lost that. God showed up to the Apostle John in like his glorified body. And John said the same thing, like, I'm dead. I think God is looking for a heart that fears him. Like really puts him in his rightful place. Like the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. The one who's so much bigger and smarter and more powerful than I am. The one that can figure out conclusions that I have no idea how to. And the one who, even if I'm surrounded and my life seems like it's spinning out of control, is still the one I can trust. I fear the Lord. Saul didn't, but David writes in Psalm 111, I think it is, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. What's God looking for? The second thing is he said, worship and obey me. If I have this perspective that God is this awe and glorious and all-encompassing, like he really is the standard of truth and judgment, and I have a genuine initial fear of him, like that is how highly I look at him. How can I not worship that? How can I not be faithful to that? How many times does God have to come through in my life and I forget about it? And I get so distracted about all my enemies and everything around my life that's falling apart in relationships and health and finances and everything else, and I feel like my whole world is falling apart. God is still there. He's still the awe-inspiring God. How can I not worship that? Because the second I start turning my attention, I get lazy, I get comfortable, I start getting wrapped up in everything else, and I start giving all my emotions, my time, and my attention, my resources. I start giving all of me to something else. You could translate that as this has become the object of my worship. Worship and obey me. Saul felt obligated to worship. David writes in Psalm 27:4, there's one thing I ask of the Lord, and that thing will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. David never felt obligated to worship. He loved to worship. I have a fear of the Lord and I just want to worship you. Finally, Samuel says, don't rebel against me. There's a huge difference between rebellion and imperfection. I think that we can have sincere imperfection in our lives, and we can have just sincere moments of failure. It happens all the time. The difference is, am I always going to point the finger and blame someone else? Am I always going to blame some other reason for my shortcomings, blame some other reason for my actions? Is it so much easier for me to point the finger and say, well, it's this person's fault and this person did this and that's why, well, you didn't show up on time. Rebellion is that like intentional, habitual, continual, unrepentant idea that I don't need God. I can do it on my own. And I'll take life in my own hands and I'll fix my own problems. But the heart that doesn't rebel, the heart that submits, sees God rightly, worships and obeys him, and even when we're surrounded in our life, I will worship before I fight my battles. Would you stand? We're going to have prayer leaders up front after the service. If you need prayer for anything, please come forward. But I specifically want to highlight two things as I pray to end this. Anyone who just listened to the story of Hannah and like, yeah, that's my life. I just feel so beaten down. I feel so bruised. I feel so abused. I feel so distraught. I feel desperately unhappy. I want to really encourage you to come meet with one of us for prayer. The second one is for those of us who we find ourselves in that pattern. Things have been good. I can manage on my own. Things have gotten comfortable. They've gotten lazy a little bit. Like, I'm not in the Word. I'm not in prayer. I'm not connected. I don't really worship. I don't really, whatever. This is a thing. I check off. I feel obligated to do this. I feel obligated to come to church. I feel obligated to worship. I just check it off so I can go back to the rest of my life. I just want to pray for those of us who just, man, I want that to be shaken off. I want to see God rightly again. I want to pray for those two things and encourage you to come forward at the end of service. So God, I thank you for today. I thank you for your word. And I thank you that as we go into this study in the life of David, that you show us what it is that you're truly looking for. How can we have a heart that in the midst of imperfection says, God, I fear you above all else. I honor you and revere you before all else. I have a genuine knowledge that you are bigger and greater than I am, and I don't want to put you in a box. You don't need my advice. I submit to you, and I worship you, and I obey you, and I put worship as a priority. Stir our hearts, God, to submit to you and not rebel, to live in obedience, and give us a passion to do it. Revive our hearts to remember your faithfulness, and let us never forget it, so that we may also be men and women after your own heart. In your name, amen.